All right, welcome in the college basketball tip-off show here, powered by WagerTalk.com. A very happy Thursday to you now, the 14th of November. We have got 17 games, I think, on the slate. One or two already underway. I know Utah Valley, maybe North Dakota already in the books. We got New Orleans, Lindenwood coming up here at the top of the hour, and then a handful of decent games. A couple of the big schools versus the mid-majors left on the schedule here today. We're going to tackle, of course, the biggest game of the day, which will be LSU traveling to Manhattan to take on K-State. And lucky for you, we've got two of the best in college basketball here on today's tip-off show as we welcome in the pen. Ralph Michaels ready to roll, as is Trigger. Adam Trigger, Mr. College Hoops himself, ready to roll. And gentlemen, let's dive in with this game here tonight, because it appears the market thinks there's clearly going to be a winner here, as Kansas State has been getting nothing but love in the market since this opened up. We're seeing them up as high, or at least I saw them up as high as 8.5 at one point earlier today, and that is, well, that's interesting. I still see an 8.5 since it opened up at 5 in a lot of spots. The total, Ralph, starting to come down a little bit, 149.5. We're finally starting to see the under money hit at 148. Listen, both these teams have not been tested yet. We're only a couple of games into the season. This is a big test for LSU. It's a good test for K-State. What do you think we're going to see in this one here tonight, Ralph?
Well, I want to give a full disclosure here on the start of college basketball. You know, the transfer portal in college basketball changed the game so much more than college football, because one good player to one of these lower echelon teams can change a team, and you just don't know how good they're going to be early. So I've been very conservative early, and this game is a perfect example of why. You know, you look at LSU, they have wins over ULM and Alabama State, two teams in the bottom 130. Kansas State beat Cleveland State the past game and played New Orleans. But when you break down the box score, against New Orleans, K-State played 12 players and 9 players played 11 minutes or more. Against Cleveland State, Kansas State played 13 players, 9 played 11 minutes or more. Against LSU, they played 13 players in game 1. 10 of them played 11 plus minutes, and against Alabama State, 8 of them played 11 plus minutes. So we have a lot of, you know, you look at Tang at Kansas State. He has said, I'm going to change my lineups a lot. So to me, I don't want to lay points with a Kansas State team that hasn't set their rotation yet, and I don't think he knows what that rotation is going to be. And then the other thing, when I look at the Kansas State game against Cleveland State, they had 19 giveaways. They only had 20 turnovers, so they were only plus 1 turnover against Cleveland State. And when you look at the 5 starters, Cleveland State's 5 starters only had 4 turnovers. Kansas State 5 starters had 13 turnovers. You're now paying a fast-paced LSU team. To me, I think it's too many points. Of course, we're going to hear so much about Cam Carter, who for 2 years played at Kansas State, including last year when they won in Baton Rouge. He is now LSU's leading scorer so far early this year. Does that help LSU a little bit? I'm sure when you have a point guard that's familiar with the setting, he knows the local guys, he's going to have his little rooting section. To me, that is an edge. I think the line has gotten too high. Give me LSU plus.
It is a little strange here, Trig. I mean, let's face it, LSU, I believe preseason, I saw them 14th in the preseason poll in the SEC. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of expectations for this LSU team. They've played UL Monroe and Alabama State, and I think those teams went 4 of 34 from three-point range. That's I don't know if that's great LSU defense, Trig, or does that say more about Monroe and Alabama State here? I can tell you this: I do expect maybe Kansas State to have a few more buckets from the outside here tonight. But maybe the total going down is an indicator that maybe we get more defense. But just the home court alone, we should be looking at K-State, should we not?
So I got a problem with that. And it goes
Okay.
back to something, I think it was Ryan Gilbert. I know it was one of Kelly's friends. I thought it was Ryan, but last year, a couple times early in the season, he said that he reported that, the K-State student section was average. Like, I think Tang even went on record saying, like, we need you guys to show up for all the games, not just Kansas, not just the big games. And I wonder with Kansas State, someone will have to, like, I went to Siena. We didn't have a football school or football program. So, like, Kansas State's got a big time home game in football on Saturday night. I wonder if it means people are into this game, or it's like, I've got a lot of stuff to do. I know I want to go to the football game on Saturday, so maybe they blow this off. All I know is this number is giving full marks to Kansas State being at home. And the other thing that I think you're going to see people misspeak on today is that Accor is not accounted for in this number. So this is what Ralph is talking about. It's one guy. He's a very important piece to this K-State team. I don't believe he's played yet this year. He should play tonight. But I've got this at like Kansas. I've got this at Kansas State -5.5. Now I don't know if I want to like go to battle with LSU in a true road game here. It's mostly because of kind of where I'm at with LSU. They didn't obviously look great their last game. I think some of that might have to do with the fact that it's just like a throwaway game where they're a 20-point favorite. And like Ralph said, they're going to rotate. To Ralph's point, he makes a really good point. These high major schools can really do whatever they want in November and December because they don't get penalized for these games come March. Your low major schools can do whatever they can rotate and figure things out because they have to win their conference at this point. No one is giving these low majors at larges anymore. So the conferences like the A10, the Mountain West, those are the ones that are like, it really matters these games because it screws them come March getting the second, third, maybe fourth team out of those types of league. So going back to what Ralph said, probably a lot of rotation, trying to figure out who's playing where. I don't know that Kansas State comes out and just goes full blast with Accor tonight, what they're going to do from minutes perspective. Maybe he comes off the bench. So yeah, there is some experimenting going on here. There is the Cam Carter factor coming back to Manhattan. I'm sure, I have him as LSU's highest rated player. He's going to want this one, no doubt about that. And he probably helped with a scouting report here for LSU playing 2 years under Tang at Kansas State. So where the number is right now, it could only be LSU plus 8.5. I think that's very inflated. That being said, I couldn't do it. So take that for what you will. Lean LSU, but nothing for me.
All right, leaning LSU here tonight against Kansas State. That, of course, is going to be the prime time and the focus tonight in college basketball. I did see in the chat room, shockingly enough, Easy Baby 1988 wants to know about Bryant versus Buffalo. Side and total, please. We're going to get there. Easy Baby 1988. Now you're talking Adam Triggers. You're talking his language here. All right, we've got something on that game coming up. Arizona State's another game tonight. Interesting against Grand Canyon. And then, of course, my boys under a new leadership there and Steve Lutz at Oklahoma State have a game against Southern Illinois, which I think is an interesting handicap. So before we get there, Ralph, you are world famous for your TNA. Let that sit in for all the new viewers for a second there. So you definitely have some TNA early on in the season here. You've got a couple of interesting news and notes, trends and angles. Give it up to, only second week here of the college basketball season, but what are you seeing right now?
Well, this is just a quick overview. Again, this isn't going to make you change a play, but I just want you to understand some situations. So far this season, favorites are 49.2%. The over is 52.5%. So a slight lean to the dogs, a slight lean to the over. But I wanted to get in a couple situations here. Home favorites so far this year, 48.9% against the spread. Home dogs this year, only 55 home dogs, but they are 34-21, 62%. Adam and I were talking about a unique college scheduling situation for Saturday, so those home dogs have been good. There have been 20 upsets as double-digit dogs this season so far. These are the teams that pool 2 upsets, not double-digit dogs, but just 2 upsets. Central Michigan, 2 upsets. Illinois State, 2 upsets. Middle Tennessee 2, Austin Pay 2, Ryder 2. And then how about this? Adam, Mr. Adam Sienna Trigger. Sienna has pulled 3 upsets, 3 games, 3 upsets. But I'll tell you what, the dog that gets the biggest recognition, North Florida. They were a 14.5-point dog to Georgia Tech. They pull the upset. They were a 19.5-point dog to South Carolina. They pull the upset. They were a 17.5-point dog against Georgia, and they covered, losing by 13. They're averaging 31.5 3-point shots against good defenses, and they're making a slew of them. So keep an eye on those teams that have pulled early upsets. And then I wanted to look, I look back at the Houston game. When a ranked team loses a game as a favorite during the first 5 games of the season, they are only 37.5% the next game. That includes the Houston win a couple nights ago. And they are 65% to the under. So we are looking at a ranked team early in the season. You want to fade them the next game and play the under. Then I looked games 6 through 10. What happens in those next stages of games if a ranked team loses as a favorite? Well, they actually start to bounce back. They've covered 52.6% since 2016, and 54.3% have gone over. So keep an eye on those early surprise dogs, and don't overreact to an early team that's ranked losing as a favorite in the season.
I love it, Ralph. Good point. Trig, I don't know if Ralph's sucking up, bringing Sienna to the table here. You and I had a conversation about your boys before their first game, in fact, and we were kind of playing the wait-and-see game on how they would do. And to Ralph's point, they have been doing way better than what we thought they might be doing to this particular point. How do you approach some of these teams that have early season success? The market, 350 plus, right? Division I schools here playing college hoops. The market is inefficient in a lot of them. They've been there for Sienna. Do you look for teams like that early on in the season, like your boys from Sienna?
No, I actually look to just ignore teams like that. And that's the beauty about 364 teams, Joe. Mm-hmm. There are some teams out there with continuity or with that are, like, in my opinion, a little bit easier to gauge. For me, it works out really nicely for me because I'm up here in the Northeast. The conferences I follow really closely, the Patriot, the Ivy, a lot of those schools bring everyone back. And it's pretty much the same team. They don't have a ton of NIL. They don't really go to the portal very often. Every once in a while, you'll see a team like Yale lose a couple of good players to the portal, but they're typically not reloading through the portal. They're just, it's very similar rosters, same coaching staff. Go look at the Ivy League. Every one of those dudes has been coaching their respective team for like a decade or more. Until Cornell lost Earl to William and Mary and got a new coach. I mean, it's like, it just stays the same, right? Like you go out to the America East, Vermont wins it every year. Colgate dominates the Patriot League. So it's like there is some continuity. And then I'll take for example, like people have been like, oh, Trig, like you haven't given out Sienna once and they've won 3 games. It's like I had no idea what to expect from this Sienna team. And I've been following them all summer. Brand new coach, Jerry McNamara. They're playing their tails off for him. 3 upset wins, but it's like, could I have forecasted that? Not really, Joe. I think I told you if Brown didn't lose their big, I would have loved Brown in the opener. So I just try to, accumulate as many data points, as much info as possible. And then the nice part is it's only November, and in 3 weeks we'll have some of that in-season data that's so valuable, and we'll be able to make better assumptions off of it. But until then, I stick to like the few teams I have a really good beat on, and it's worked so far. So we'll try to keep it going.
All right. Love it. Good information there, guys. Don't forget, hit that like, hit the subscribe button if you're new to us here at Wager Talk TV. We certainly appreciate the support. Shout out to the chat room. Is Big Daddy in the house saying salute to the Magic Pen. Mr. Michaels is here. Adam Trigger. Also, Titan CT ready to roll here. Easy Bay 1988. We have got you covered. Good to see you guys, as well as those Arthur Pierce, Todd Dankin in the house over on TikTok. And, of course, Slump Kruger in the house, Sage Daddy 8 over on IG. Guys, we appreciate you stopping by here. Welcome back, college basketball for sure. All right, Trig. Easy Baby 1988. I am just going to guess, since you are wearing a Buffalo Bulls sweatshirt, that you have a side in this game that you like more than the other. So, Bryant taking home Buffalo here. 0-1 for Bryant, 1-1 for Buffalo. What are we going to get tonight here?
Yeah, this is a 4%er. My first appearance on the Hoop Show, I wasn't going to hold out on you guys. And then I knew you threw this game in here for me, Joe, and you didn't even know I was playing. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to come on and give it for free. So I played Buffalo plus 5.5. Actually, probably some 6s out there right now. And I just don't think the general market or even like a lot of the odds makers have much of a clue on these two teams. And so this is what you go back to your last question. This is what I'll do. Like, I trust my read on Bryant and Buffalo more than whoever made the number on this game or whoever's betting this game somewhere. These are two teams I follow closely. I've watched basically every minute they've played so far this year against a D1 opponent. And so here's what I think is happening with this number and with these two teams. Like, I make the number here 2.5 or 3 Buffalo. So 5.5, 6, like that's some serious value. And it tells me that people are looking at Bryant's team. There's a lot of talent there. There's a few players back that are really good. They brought in a couple of good players. So there's talent there, and they're going off of like the perception that this Bryant roster is very good. At the same time, people are looking at Buffalo and saying, okay, Isaiah Adams is gone. Cy Chapman is gone. A lot of their production from last year is gone. So Buffalo is 8 freshmen, 4 sophomores, 2 portal guys, like all these new faces. But I think there's a little bit of addition by subtraction going on there. So if you watch Buffalo last year, they were a complete train wreck, one of the worst teams in Division One. First year for George Halkovich went totally off the rails, but they did start to play well toward the end of the season, and he was really excited about the team coming into the season this year. And if you look at this roster, he's only in his second year, and they're all his guys. Not one single player still left from the previous regime now on this team. And if you've watched them so far, they're a much better, much more cohesive unit than what we saw last year. They were, I think they're top 15 in shot quality, has them top 15 in like expected field goal percentage right now. They hit 11 threes against Notre Dame, shot like 56% from the field in an upset win over Old Dominion. I don't think the market's even close on Buffalo right now. Everyone has them finishing last in the MAC. I don't think they're finishing last in the MAC. I've seen MAC teams that look worse than this Buffalo team. And then on the Bryant side, you know, this is a team that they look great on paper. And when you look at them in the context of the America East, there's a lot of good returners. But I don't think they have an identity yet. And that's kind of what I saw against in their upset loss that Ralph mentioned to Siena. They lose Sharif Gross-Bullock. They lose Daniel Rivera. Gross-Bullock was the one that held everything together for them last year, and Rivera was their best defender. And without them, I saw some lineups that I don't think were great for them. They tried to go big in some scenarios. And against Siena, the ball was going all over the place. They didn't have the guy to sort of settle things down, which was Gross-Bullock last year, and they turned it over 23 times, which led to 20 Siena points. Rafael Pinzon is a great player, but he played off of Gross-Bullock last year. So he turned it over 7 times on his own against Siena. Buffalo's got a lot of good ball pressure. They play hard. There's athletes. Anquan Bolden Jr. is a very good athlete. He's going to be up in someone's shorts in this game and making life tough. 5.5 points is too many. I think this is going to be a pretty good game tonight.
All right, thinking it's going to be a pretty good game. How about you, Ralph? Are you in agreement? Maybe you're looking at a total here. It does. Some people in the chat room a little bit worried here about the coaching / experience matchup here. But, I mean, Bryant was an 11-point favorite at Siena, and Siena made him look bad. So what are we doing here, Ralph, with this game? You in agreement with Trig?
Well, I just want to reemphasize what Adam said. And it's so important, guys. If you're not sure of a team and you have not physically watched them or read enough about them, just don't bet them. And that's where I am in this game. I actually, this morning, Joe, when I looked at this game, I actually leaned Bryant. I thought, my God, you look at Bryant's lineup. They are so much more star quality. You know, Pinson played at St. John's and Wither started at UMass Lowell for 4 years. And Evans had 24 starts at Bonaventure. And Timberlake started at Miami of Florida and Memphis. So talent-wise, I say yes. Buffalo, I mentioned this to Adam before. Buffalo, Adam taught me a bunch about the Buffalo Bulls before you came on, Joe. Buffalo has nine newcomers. Only one is from the U.S. They've got 5 kids from Canada, including their point guard, couple guys from London, couple guys, I think, from Africa. So he really just opened up. I mean, this is a guy that, coached at Villanova for a couple decades. He knows what he's doing, and he's got his program turned around. So to me, Adam schooled me on this. It's a game I would have said I'm going to give out an opinion on Bryant, but I'm just going to say, listen to what Adam said. I will agree with him. I have not watched either of those teams. So to me, it's something that I will wait and learn, and I appreciate the info I learned from Mr. Trigger.
Hey, Joe, I want to just jump in.
Sure.
I just want to jump in and the comment that was made, more coaching experience. Phil Martelli Jr. is now the coach of Bryant, who took over for Jared Grasso after he, was hammered last year driving home or whatever happened like a week before the season. So, I mean, I don't think there's a experience edge there. They're both young guys. Martelli obviously coached with his dad forever on different staffs, and he's a good coach, but I don't know that I don't know that you give him like an edge over Halkovich, who honestly is probably being unfairly judged right now because he inherited a complete disaster. Martelli inherited a team that could contend last year. Grasso had that team like ready to roll in the America East. Halkovich inherited a complete disaster, and it's almost like because Neptune's struggling at Villanova, anyone that's from the Jay Wright coaching tree can't coach. I think that's like, again, I just think the market's very uninformed on Buffalo. But Ralph is right. Talent-wise, you look at this Bryant roster, there is a lot to like about it from an individual talent standpoint. And if you watch the Siena game, I just think that's where it's like people are not in the right places. They don't have the guard. Like Timberlake was kind of the guy in the post last year doing everything. He's a 6'6" kind of versatile guy that can play everywhere. But now they're trying to go bigger. It's just not there yet. So I don't know how you could justify laying that number on the road with them. Anything can happen, but I think it's going to take a couple of games for Bryant. And a name to watch, Ralph Michaels' long-lost other son, Ben Michaels, freshman at Buffalo this year, is going to be one of the best freshmen in the MAC conference. No one knows about him yet. So you should keep an eye on him tonight for Buffalo. He's really good.
All right. See that, guys? You got questions, and we have got answers. He meant the experience of the roster, not Martelli, by the way, just to be fair, fart not. We got you covered there. Yep, we got you covered there. We've got Eric DeLong in the house here. And again, we appreciate you guys stopping by here as the college basketball tip-off show off and running. We'll be back again tomorrow. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and the like button, as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Become part of the WagerTalk TV family. You guys know the routine. Before we get to a best bet here across the board, we'll take some questions on games that you have. Again, it's only a 17-game slate here tonight, but some intriguing matchups, and one at which LSU is not necessarily a lock there, Young and Ben. We did open up the show with that game, but I wouldn't use the word lock in LSU a whole lot this season, not necessarily. But, Ralph, I want to ask you a question here on a game involving, my boys, the Oklahoma State Cowboys tonight. New coach taking on Southern Illinois to Salukis. But you know what, Ralph? New coach there, too. Scott Nagy, who I believe was Wright State. Then it was South Dakota State, teams that are known to run. Southern Illinois, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, was always a team where first one to 51. I don't think they're going to be like that anymore. I think they are going to want to get out and run again. Lutz is now the coach over at Oklahoma State. They have brought in, of course, a whole bunch of guys in the transfer portal, and they are expecting to be a little bit better than they were a year ago, and I think they're going to be. Bryce Thompson back again for Oklahoma State, which is always good to have some experience, but man, you don't see totals like this with Southern Illinois very often here. Everyone's betting Oklahoma State. It's up to 11.5. It's in Stillwater. I think even Trigg would agree this is a pretty tough place to play here, although they've done a pretty good job the last couple of years of hanging with Oklahoma State, even beating them, in fact, at home last year. But what do we think? Scott Nagy here, I mean, this is going to be up-tempo. There ain't nothing slow about this game.
Yeah, I think there's value on the over, Joe. And by the way, you really, I want to give you props. You really went out on the freaking limb. Oklahoma State had 12 wins last year. I think the Cowboys are going to be better. I'm really glad that you went out on such a strong statement. So.
Listen, I thought Gundy and the football team would be better this year too, and that hasn't necessarily worked out, Ralph. So I'm just going to draw the line in the sand and say hopefully the basketball team will be better than they were a year ago. But it's different coaches, different styles now for both these teams.
Well, there's a big difference to me is if you have a new coach coming in and says he wants to press tempo, that's one thing. If you have a coach like Scott Nagy, who was a decade at South Dakota State and 7 or 8 years at Wright State, when you have that experience with teams that you've taken to the tourney and you want to change the pace, people buy into that program. And that's exactly what you have with Southern Illinois. So I think there's value because of what Southern Illinois used to did, like you said. I mean, granted, they only played Charleston and they played Missouri S&T, but they are shooting once every 13.8 seconds. That is the 5th fastest in college basketball. And by the way, even though they play two poor offenses, their defense is number 360 as far as effective field goal percentage. Oklahoma State, the exact same way. Top 10 in tempo, bottom 65 in defense early. Their three-point defense, they're allowing 43% shooting from three-point. Now, Southern Illinois didn't make any, but again, remember that Charleston game, their first game of the season, was at a neutral setting. Yes, Stillwater's tough to take over. To me, this is just simply a game that, looking at the early stats, tells me enough that I would only go over, and that would be the only decision I would make on this game.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think the over is not a bad look at all here, given there will be enough possessions for both these teams to get this thing up and over the total. Trig, I got to ask you, would lean first half on Oklahoma State. Big Daddy, also probably not a bad look there. But Trig, one of the games and the teams that has been asked in a chat room was a place you went to, and you weren't all that impressed, if I remember, when you visited UNLV. In fact, you didn't think it was a very good, that was Thomas and Mack there. You didn't think it was a great home court advantage. And there are a lot of people questioning, why the hell are they a 17.5-point favorite tonight over Nebraska Omaha, who I believe is one of those programs you talked about. It's got, I think, 3 returning starters from a year ago. It's, they've got the experience. I don't think they're going to be overly worried about it. Good win against Stetson. I thought they were going to beat Minnesota, which is not an easy thing to do. Is this too many points here for UNLV?
Oh, yeah. It could only be Omaha or pass. As far as UNLV, from a atmosphere standpoint, there's just too much to do in Vegas now. Like UNLV basketball at one time was like the thing for a sports fan.
Right.
I'm sure Ralph can attest to that. Now you've got hockey, you've got NFL. I mean, there's just so much more. And college basketball, like specifically for college basketball fans, you don't need to go to a UNLV game to get your fix anymore. T-Mobile's going to host a bunch of good games over the course of November, December. I think we had it out 2 years ago, went to a UNLV game against, at the time, undefeated, nationally ranked Dayton. There was like 4,000 people, maybe 4,000 or 5,000. I believe that building holds like 11 or 12, maybe even more. Thomas and Mack's pretty big. So yeah, I don't know that you get like a huge atmosphere here. I don't hate the talent on UNLV, but in this role, I would agree. I made this 12. So if I was just trusting numbers, if I was just going based off numbers, which I don't, I factor, many other things into a handicap, but just numbers, I would have to play Omaha. Yeah, that's about all I have on that one. It wasn't one that really was like super on my radar. I do think UNLV could potentially bounce back from losing to Memphis. Not that that's a bad loss, but that it was one that they were a slight favorite in. But I couldn't lay 17.5. So Omaha or pass for me here.
Yeah,
Hey,
I mean, Ralph, the Rebels are going running. I mean, they're still going to average that 80, 85 points a game. They're not going to slow down for anybody. The question is, can Omaha, Nebraska keep up? 17 and a half feels like a big number here.
Yeah, especially with, while they scored 94 against Alabama State, it was just because they shot the lights out. They weren't pressing the tempo. So I think that is part of the reason. I do want to jump back, Joe, 1 second. I did go to the database, because that Oklahoma State line is sort of high. When I went back all the way to 2013, college basketball totals of 160 or higher the first 5 games of the season are 54% to the under. So again, I leaned over and we talked about it, but I just wanted to give you guys the data in there. Just because it's over early in the season doesn't mean it's an overplay. Only 46% to the over, 54% to the under. UNLV gets love, and Adam, the last time UNLV basketball was relevant, you had Steve Wynn courtside seats. It was the 80s. It was Anthony Thomas. Yeah. Thank you, Cavs, for drafting him number 1, by the way. Now, a couple years ago when they got to the Mountain West Championship, it was there, and Boise knocked them out. I was there with a bunch of guys, and that actually had where the lower bowl was completely full and some of the upper bowl was full, but there are only a handful of games the entire season where the UNLV crowd makes a difference. To me, I would only give them a 2 or 2-point home edge, just because you got to remember, you look at the NHL, you look at the Golden Knights, right? When teams have an off day after they play Las Vegas and they stay in Las Vegas, they are horrible the next day. But in college, you don't have those distractions. You go to the hotel, you go to your game, you take the bus back, you go. You don't have the free times like the pros do where it can be a distraction. So to me, it is too high. Did UNLV think they could beat Memphis? Losing by 6 is a good game. But I don't like the situation. They haven't played since Saturday. I actually lean with the dog here.
Leaning with the dog here, who is not going to be faced since their first 2 games were on the road anyway. They beat a pretty good, a 20-win Stetson team from a year ago to open it up, and they should have beaten Minnesota, actually. If they could have hit a 3, would have been good. But 17 and a half, Big Daddy, to your question, feels like a huge number in this spot. Also, we mentioned how Kansas State was getting all the love in the marketplace early today. There's another team getting a ton of love in the marketplace. I happen to think it's warranted. But what are we thinking here, Trig, with Grand Canyon, who is welcoming back, I think, last year's, was it Player of the Year for Grand Canyon? And Arizona State, if they don't hit threes, I have a feeling they're not going to win a lot of games this year. Experience with Grand Canyon, some transfers in from Arizona State, although they almost beat Gonzaga, so I guess there's that. But everyone seems to love Grand Canyon in this game. It's up as high as what now? Close to what, 5.5, somewhere in that ballpark. Do you like Grand Canyon this year? It was another one of these teams that you were scouting out on your trips around the college basketball world.
Yeah, I have a buddy out there. I'll actually get to go to Grand Canyon out in January to a Grand Canyon home game. As far as do I like them this year, not as much as the market does. And that's, I think, the biggest point to make right here. The betting public and the market love this Grand Canyon team. I've seen previews where people are putting them in the top 25. They're very reminiscent of Florida Atlantic last year to me, from where they're positioned in the market. Coming, of course, Florida Atlantic had that great run 2 years ago, going to the Final Four, and then the next year, last year, just insane premium to back them. I do think if you bet this early and got a little bit of ahead of it, that you have a good number with Grand Canyon -2.5. I don't hate that. It's about where I make the number for this game now at 5 or 6. I don't know that I want to play back at it. I'm not high enough on Arizona State. Now this game is in the Footprint Center where the Phoenix Suns play. It's a neutral court in Phoenix. Of course, the player you mentioned, Tyon Grant Foster, will play tonight. I've heard that he's a full go, but again, you never really know. He didn't play in a lot of the preseason stuff for them. I heard a rumor that the Grand Canyon Baylor scrimmage was played at an extremely high level. He didn't play in that game. But like I said, everything I've heard about Grand Canyon so far has been glowing. So obviously, I think they're still without maybe Brennan. They're still missing someone else so far. But again, you look at them from where the market has them. They didn't cover against Cal Fullerton. They didn't cover against Western Kentucky. So maybe that got you a little bit of value here. I make this number closer to 3. So I'm not going to play it. I don't hate Grand Canyon if you got in early. I guess I see it getting there. Ultimately, 5, it probably gets there. I think they're considerably better than Arizona State, but it's going to be really tough to find spots to bet Grand Canyon this year because everyone is just so high on them that's going to be reflected night in and night out in the number.
It feels like, Ralph, too, it might be like a sell high spot here is Santa Clara. I believe they were the favorite over Arizona State. They won that one. They took Gonzaga, who everyone just watched absolutely demolish Baylor to open the season. They took them to the final couple of minutes there and just gave it away, or Gonzaga actually won it late. But I don't know. It feels like they're very reliant on the 3. And when you get these games early on in NBA arenas, Ralph, we talk a lot about this during the tournament, right? It's a totally different situation for teams that like to shoot the 3, is it not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, day one of those tournaments when you have the different lightings and the sight lines. And let's remember this, while Grand Canyon's excited to play where the Phoenix Suns play, I think it's actually more of an edge to Arizona State because now all of a sudden you have people that live in Phoenix that are Arizona State fans. They're going to come. You lose the student section that you have at Grand Canyon. So to me, that takes away 2 points of Grand Canyon's home edge, which I think this line is way too high. Arizona was sloppy with the ball with turnovers. But again, there's a lot of people that are going to turn the ball over. They turned the ball over early. They only had 10 turnovers against Gonzaga. So, I look at season to date stats and I say, well, they're not good for Arizona State and they're sloppy with the ball. But then I say, well, listen, you went on the road and you played Gonzaga to 8 points and you only turned the ball over 8 times. I am not worried about that Grand Canyon defense that does get pressure and is a good rebounding team as well. So rebounding and defensive pressure go to Grand Canyon, but Grand Canyon hasn't hit the 3 well, hasn't defended the 3 well. Arizona State, the edge on both sides of those ball. Value to me with what I was going to say Pac-12 team, I should say Big 12 team playing 12, where the Phoenix Suns play, which again, they'll be very excited. Those kids, kids are excited to play in NFL arenas, just like college football players are excited to play in NFL stadiums.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
to Ralph's point, I'm not giving Grand Canyon a single point for home court here. I definitely agree with that point. This game being played at the Footprint Center, no doubt is more beneficial to Arizona State. That's a really good point that he made. So I gave them 0 bump for home court. And it really is going to come down to if Duke Brennan is still out, so believe he has an arm injury. I know that they've announced that Grant Foster will play tonight. I have not heard Duke Brennan. If he's out, I think you can make a pretty good case to play back at the move. 5.5 with Arizona State, that's a decent number. Personally, I'm not going to do it, but I think you can make a good case to do it if Brennan is still sidelined for Grand Canyon.
All right, I like it. There you go here, guys. Those are going to be some of the big games. Again, only 17 across the board. Don't forget, thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, join us. We'll ask these guys for a game that they like a little more than the rest here. We'll get a couple of best bets out of the way for you. Again, only 17 games on the slate here tonight. And I am guessing, Trig, your best bet is certainly going to be, well, the one you gave to clients and that you opened up the show with is going to be, is it Buffalo here now? Is that where we're going for a best bet?
Yeah, it's Buffalo. I did the full breakdown, but there was a couple things I left out. So again, I'll talk more real quick about the Bryant side. Last year, they were 3rd overall in adjusted tempo and top 10 in shortest possessions for any team in the country. And that's basically what Grasso did and what Martelli is going to continue to do. Just rip down the floor, fire an open three. Like basically their whole offense is try to get a little bit of a dribble drive, kick, take a three, or let Timberlake just do whatever he wants because he is that good. That's their offense. And the problem I saw with Siena, and the reason I'm going against them tonight, is without Rivera from last year, who was their best defender, and another guard, and Gross Bullock, who was one of the best guards in the America East, they just don't quite have the right people in the right positions. Pinzon is handling the ball too much. And I just think that that's going to take more than one game to figure out. I'll go back to the stat from the Siena game. 23 turnovers and 20 points off of turnovers for Siena. You can't just give Buffalo those types of free points. Buffalo would love to have Anquan Bolden Jr. on the floor for extended periods of time because he's a great defender and a tremendous athlete. The reason they can't have him on the floor for extended periods of time is he's not a great scorer. But if you're going to give him runouts and he's going to be able to take a steal and go lay it in on the other end and be productive that way, that's a huge hidden edge for Buffalo, in my opinion. Going back to the question from the chat, yeah, they're inexperienced, but again, sometimes personalities are addition by subtraction. You had to get those holdover guys out from the previous regime. It was a little bit of a cancer to the culture there. Halkovich is thrilled to have all of his guys. Ralph alluded to the kid from Canada. He's really good. Like he came from a Canadian college. So his name's Tyson Dunn, completely unknown. Think he was the one that hit the game winner against Old Dominion. He's been really good so far. And again, Ben Michaels, a name to watch. He is a freshman, and I think he will end up being one of the most impactful players on that Buffalo team this year, quite possibly the best freshman in the entire MAC. So I don't think the market is caught up at all on Buffalo. I still think Bryant has some things to work out. Tough to work those things out early in the season on the road. So Buffalo plus the points, 5.5 or 6. I think they might be able to win the game.
You know, Joe, I just want to throw one thing in on Adam's play. You know, he talks so much about when there's value and when to blow value. When you have a team like Buffalo that was picked last in the MAC by Blue Ribbon, and listen, we all look at Blue Ribbon, we all look at Ken Palm, we all look at Bartorvik, and that's where you want to find the values, when you could find the discrepancies that Blue Ribbon was wrong, because they're guessing just like we are. When you have 9 newcomers on the team, there's no one that could tell you how good that team is going to be until you watch them scrimmage and start playing these games.
There you go. A lot to look forward to here, guys, in the college basketball season. And Ralph, do you have a best bet here tonight, a game that you like a little more than the rest?
Well, this isn't quite a best bet because it wasn't a client play. I did pass today. And I do want to apologize in advance, Joe. You know my rule is to pick one team that is least ranked 300 or higher in Ken Palm, but I'm only going to go with 293 in Morehead State. So, we have Chattanooga and Morehead State. And, Morehead State is a bottom 70 team. Chattanooga, middle of the road. Yes, they started 0-3, in the SoCon. But again, they played USC, St. Mary's, Austin Peay, and all 3 were on the road. So now they can establish their home defense. And they haven't had much defense because, again, the strength of schedule they played. But they are still slow-tempoed. They scored 51 points against USC. They scored 61 points against Austin Peay. They're number 305 in tempo. Morehead State. Now, you could say their offense is miserable, but if you play at Louisville and you play at Cincinnati, those are your 2 Division I teams. There are going to be most teams are going to be 0-2, and most teams are going to shoot horrible against very good defenses. But again, when they have the ball, they are in no hurry to bring it up. They're under 349 in offense tempo because they bring the ball up slow. They don't have those established guards to lead the way. They have a sophomore point guard. And, it's a situation where I went to the database, and again, this is skewed because of the competition you played. But if you just blindly bet 2 teams that are averaging under 40% shooting on the season in a non-conference game, 91 overs, 136 unders, that is 60% to the under in 8 years. and over 220 games of sample size. Moorhead, number 349 in offensive tempo. They're 0-2 against Division I teams. They have the number 361 offense. They shot 23.1 and 35.7% against Cincinnati and Louisville. Chattanooga with the number 305 overall tempo. I'm going to go under 143.5. That is game 731, 732. Moorhead at Tennessee Chattanooga under the total.
Wow, that is disgusting, Ralph, and I am all for it here. All right, I'm going to throw an even more disgusting one at you, Ralph. You ready for this? Because you went Moorhead State, and I'm going to go even more disgusting. I am going to go, you ready for that? I hope you're sitting down. How about Cal Poly tonight, huh? Taking on Seattle at home, Ralph. Is that disgusting enough for you? And look, I'm not alone because this game opened up at Cal Poly getting 7. It is now down to 4.5. And the reason I love Cal Poly, especially this year, is their coach. They brought in one of the most successful Division II head coaches in Mike DeGeorge, who came over from the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. And I love this because he is a guy that went 141-43 there as a coach and 103-26 in the conference, averaging 25 wins a year. He actually brought over every sharpshooter from D2 and he recruited them to this team, and they can shoot absolute lights out, taking on a Seattle team, people, who can't stop the three of us, Ralph. I'm pretty sure you'd even drop 15 on Seattle this year, who has 0 defense. Home team, good shooters, no defense, getting points. I'll take Cal Poly slow to be absolutely gross and disgusting with you, Ralph, here for the best bet
Joe,
here tonight.
Are you calling them the Indiana Hoosiers with Craig Siganetti bringing over everyone to the roster to bring it up?
Trig will attest to this. Trig, there's something about these D2 guys, these young guys coming up that have had nothing but success, and then brought every great shooter in D2 in the conference with him to Cal Poly. I'll take that any day, getting points at home here tonight. Cal Poly.
Oh, yeah, Joe, by the way.
Going to be interesting.
By the way.
Yes.
Cal Poly, number 7 in the country in free throw shooting. Seattle, number 331.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think the guy knows what he's doing there.
That was one where I think the number probably got bet to where it should be. I think overnight, right, Joe, that was as high as Cal Poly +7. Like, if you made that bet, that's a great bet. I don't disagree with you. I think they're probably the right side. It's just it got bet to where the number should be. Like, what is it, 4.5 right now? I think that's probably like an
4.5. I think it's solid at 4.5. Total keeps getting bet up to 153, but I still like the chances for Cal Poly at home here, maybe even an outright win against a team that can't stop anybody. Don't forget, guys, appreciate Big Daddy and those of you in there, A Life in Vegas, hanging out with us. Mike's in the house, of course. Unfriendly German in TikTok. Yes, Buffalo was definitely the play if you're just joining us here. Ralph Michaels ready to roll, as is Adam Trigger, all college basketball season long. Make sure you visit them at WagerTalk.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and make plans. Hey, we'll be back again tomorrow. Great slate on a Friday heading into the second big weekend of the college basketball season. We certainly hope to see you again tomorrow, as well as the return of the NBA tip-off show tomorrow, since we only have, one game tonight. What the hell are you scheduling, NBA? We'll have more for you tomorrow. Until then, guys, cash those tickets tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow here on the college basketball tip-off show. Good luck.